On a December morning in 1980, a woman in her 40s entered a Los Angeles jail cell. Inside, an inmate named Ada Louise Smith, 32, was resting on a bench. Ada had been detained for 4 days, suspected of involvement in a violent crime, the passing away of a local nurse. Yet, the details around Ada's involvement puzzled the police, as she was not forthcoming with any clear information despite undergoing hours of questioning, a polygraph test, and even a strip search. She had been left without food at one point and endured the cold cell without shoes, yet she showed no signs of breaking under pressure. Now, with no solid answers, the police decided to try a different approach. They sent an undercover officer into the cell, posing as another inmate to gain Ada's trust. The hope was that she might reveal information about her role in the crime. When the undercover officer entered, the sound stirred Ada from her rest. Ada, who appeared more like an unassuming suburban professional than someone capable of unaliving someone, responded calmly as she sized up the new cellmate. The officer maintained her neutral demeanor, eventually asking, "What are you in here for?" Ada, after a brief pause, replied, "You're not going to believe me." Intrigued, the officer urged her to continue, prompting Ada to say something that startled her. "I think this is going to be a movie." In another room, a police captain was listening to this conversation unfold. He couldn't ignore Ada's casual reference to fame in connection with a horrific crime. Only days earlier, Ada had led the police to the body of 31-year-old nurse Melanie Uribe, who had been attacked, robbed, and left in a canyon. The captain, watching the exchange, felt disgusted at Ada's nonchalance. He began to form a theory about how she might be involved. 6 days earlier, Melanie had left for her hospital shift in Burbank but never arrived. Police efforts to locate her turned up nothing, and she seemed to have vanished. 2 days after her disappearance, Ada had appeared at the police station, claiming to know where Melanie was. When asked to point out the location, she marked Lopez Canyon on a map, about 25 miles from Los Angeles, saying Melanie could be found there. Pressed on how she knew this information, Ada offered no solid answer beyond a vague reference to her conscience. She seemed too confident, almost eager to assist the investigation, which contrasted with her story of simply wanting to clear her conscience. Ada, a well-regarded employee at an aerospace company, had government clearance. Yet, the detective on her case found it odd that she would know the whereabouts of a missing body without any clear connection to the crime. Was this merely a lucky guess, or did it point to something more sinister? When Ada offered to help find the body the next day, the detective arranged a helicopter search. But an hour later, she returned, saying she had driven to the canyon with her young children and found Melanie's body. She even claimed that her 7-year-old child had made the grim discovery. Shocked by Ada's actions, the detective, with backup, accompanied her to the canyon, where Melanie's body was indeed found in the exact location Ada described. At this point, the police detained Ada. They hoped a few days in jail might scare her into confessing. Yet, after 4 days, Ada hadn't offered any more information beyond casually suggesting her story could be turned into a movie. The captain, frustrated, knew that technically, no crime had been committed by simply knowing where a body was located. But then, on that 4th day, a phone call changed the entire case. It emerged that on the day Ada reported Melanie's location, she had been listening to a radio broadcast about the nurse's disappearance. The announcer mentioned where Melanie's truck had been found, and it was during this broadcast that Ada reportedly heard a distinct voice that told her, "She's not in one of those houses." Immediately after hearing the sound, Ada turned around, bewildered, wondering who was in the room with her. Yet the space remained empty. No one else was there. In an instant, a series of vivid images flashed through her mind, scenes she couldn't quite piece together. She saw a dusty road, a shrub, and a glimpse of something white, a nurse's shoe. Ada could distinctly visualize these 3 elements. It was then that she realized with unsettling certainty. She knew where Melanie Uribe was. Unsure of what to do next, Ada wrestled with her thoughts before finally deciding to approach the police, despite how bizarre it sounded. Without hesitation, she got into her car, drove to the police station, and declared that she somehow knew Melanie Uribe was located in a particular canyon. Though the police agreed to check it out the next day, Etta couldn't bring herself to wait. Driven by urgency, she took her children with her and headed directly to the canyon she had envisioned. Upon arriving, she found the dirt road and the shrub from her vision. And, with her children's help, they discovered the white nurse's shoe, which lay disturbingly close to Melanie's body. Etta's inexplicable experience, including the voice she'd heard and the visions she'd seen, had remarkably led her to the exact location. Several days later, while Etta was being questioned by undercover officers, a breakthrough occurred. The police received a critical phone call informing them that 3 men had been arrested after bragging about Melanie's demise. They confessed to the crime, clearing Etta's name. Though the mystery surrounding her knowledge of Melanie's whereabouts remained, Etta was released. The men were later found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. 6 years on, Etta filed a lawsuit against the police department and won, as the jury believed in the authenticity of her experience. She clarified that her statement about living a bad movie had been twisted, explaining she never sought fame or intended to make a movie about her experience. Switching gears to another true, intriguing horror story. On the night of November 7, 1860, a 51-year-old politician entered his modest home in Springfield, Illinois. Though exhausted, he was elated, holding a telegram that confirmed his hard-earned victory. Earlier, he had been out celebrating, but now he was ready for rest. Moving through the house with an oil lamp, he went to his study, placed the lamp and telegram on the desk, and collapsed on the sofa. Just before closing his eyes, he glanced into a mirror, only to see something shocking: a ghostly version of his own face beside his reflection. Startled, he approached the mirror, but the eerie vision disappeared as he drew near. Trying to brush it off as exhaustion, he lay back down, only to see the ghostly face reappear. Uneasy, he went to his bedroom, confiding in his spiritualist wife, who interpreted it as a premonition of an untimely death after a second term in office. Although he dismissed her fears, the politician did go on to serve his first term, win re-election, and, tragically, met his end in his second term. That man was Abraham Lincoln, who, as president, was ultimately unalived by John Wilkes Booth. In a different story of resilience, on April 1, 1984, 28-year-old James Sevenier woke up covered in snow, his body aching and partially stained with blood. Struggling to breathe through the intense pain, he realized he had blood and broken teeth in his mouth. Barely able to move, he surveyed his surroundings, seeing a massive, snow-covered mountain in the distance. His mind raced, trying to piece together how he ended up in this desolate place, but survival instincts kicked in as he braced himself for the ordeal ahead. James, a self-proclaimed climbing enthusiast, lived a nomadic life, traveling the globe in search of the most challenging peaks. As he lay injured in the snow, fragments of his memory began to return. He recalled that he had come to the Canadian Rockies with his close friend, Richard Whitmore, to conquer an 11,000-foot mountain known as Mount Deltaform. The two had been ascending when they were suddenly swept up in a powerful avalanche, sending them tumbling down the mountain's steep slope, a fall as long as the Empire State Building's height. Realizing the gravity of the situation, James looked around, hoping his friend had survived. Soon, he spotted a crumpled figure lying motionless nearby. Crawling through blinding pain, he made his way to Richard, only to discover his friend's chest wasn't moving, his body twisted in an unnatural way. James, overwhelmed with grief, lay beside his friend in the snow, accepting that help wouldn't arrive for days. Struggling to move or even breathe, he prepared himself to succumb to the cold, believing that the mountains would ultimately claim him. But then, just as hypothermia began setting in, he heard a voice. A woman had appeared behind him, urging him not to give up. Her calming presence reignited his will to survive, and he found himself instinctively following her instructions, even as every movement sent waves of pain through his battered body. She guided him step by step, instructing him to put on his coat, drink some water, and slowly detach himself from his friend's body. Despite his injuries, he managed to hoist himself up with the help of a nearby tree and began to walk, the mysterious woman keeping pace and encouraging him with each painful step. For hours, James forced himself forward through the thick snow, spurred on by her quiet insistence. Finally, he reached the campsite he and Richard had set up earlier, hoping for warmth and shelter. But when he turned to thank the woman for helping him, he saw no one. There were no tracks other than his own, stretching back to the site of his fall. Shaken, he pressed on, but his injured hands struggled to open the tent and his strength waned as he attempted to build a fire. Then, as he teetered on the edge of despair, real voices echoed nearby. A group of skiers, including a nurse and a mountain guide, appeared. They immediately recognized his condition and sprang into action, making a fire and keeping him warm while one of them went for help. Hours later, a rescue helicopter arrived, airlifting James to safety. He would ultimately recover fully from his ordeal. Years passed before James shared the story of the mysterious woman. He feared skepticism, but as he recounted his experience, he learned that others had encountered similar guides in moments of extreme danger. Known as the third man effect, this phenomenon involves a comforting presence assisting those on the brink of death, guiding them to safety. Survivors, such as the last person to escape the South Tower of the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001, have shared similar accounts of voices or figures guiding them to safety in critical moments. Whether it's a psychological survival mechanism or something beyond explanation, James, a self-professed atheist and scientist, remains convinced that this presence was neither angelic nor religious. For him, she was simply the presence he needed in that life or death moment. Someone or something that ultimately saved his life. From the eerie premonitions of a president to the inexplicable guidance that saved a man on the brink of death, these stories remind us of the thin veil between the known and the unknown. Are these moments coincidences, psychological phenomena, or something far beyond human comprehension? Let us know what you think in the comments below. If these tales left you with chills, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping stories that keep you questioning reality.